The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
I wanted to thank the Member of Parliament for Jean-Pierre for her very eloquent speech that she gave just a few moments ago. And I will say, just starting off, I was very disturbed by the question coming from the Liberal side, but I'll come back to that in a moment, Mr. Speaker. I need to start, I think, as all members of Parliament need to start, by paying tribute to the incredible diligence and dedication of the public servants that run our government and provide services to our citizens right across the length and breadth of this land. Mr. Speaker, they are incredibly dedicated. They are people who give their lives to public service, who make sure in every part of the country, in the National Capital Region, like in my riding of New Westminster Burnaby, they make sure that citizens receive good quality of services. They are an incredibly dedicated group. And yet, Mr. Speaker, we are now facing a situation in this country that has no parallel in any other industrialized country. Certainly the only time you can see this kind of situation where public servants working with such dedication don't receive the paycheck that they deserve, so richly deserve at the end of the week because of government mismanagement. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to find a parallel. Only in terms of warfare or insurrection do public servants end up in the situation that they end up here. And yet we have a government that simply refuses to take responsibility and refuses to take the important measures that would actually lead to us fixing the system. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to come back to the date of February 28, 2016. Liberals have been in power now for a number of months, and they made the decision, the Liberal government made the decision to operationalize the Phoenix system. They made that decision. Now, we just heard a very disturbing question from a Liberal MP trying to say it's not our fault, and I find that deplorable, Mr. Speaker. The heart of our democratic system is governments taking responsibility for the decisions they've made. Yep. And yes, of course, the Conservatives shouldn't have actually started down that path of getting Phoenix into place. But the Liberals had the choice to make, and they chose on February 28, 2016, after months in power, to operationalize Phoenix. Now, what should they have done, Mr. Speaker? Well, as my colleague, the member for Jean-Pierre, just pointed out, people in the public service had pointed out the problems that would arise with Phoenix. Liberals ignored them. And it would have taken a 30-second Google search, Mr. Speaker, for them to find out what had happened in Queensland with a similar system. In Queensland, they didn't have the benefit of a debacle occurring with a similar system before, so Queensland moved forward with IBM and put in place a system that was catastrophic. Within weeks, they realized that public servants in the Queensland area were not getting their paychecks. Within weeks, the Queensland government realized they had to take action. And they ended up, for a system that was supposed to save them money, paradoxically, Mr. Speaker, they ended up paying over $1.2 billion to fix the boondoggle that was the Phoenix-like system in Queensland. So, we should have learned from their error. We should have had maybe one Liberal MP just do a Google search and find out, should we put this into place? We've been in power for months now. We have this important decision to make. Do we move forward on February 28, 2016 with the Phoenix system, or do we take a step back, the way so many public servants are requesting that we do, and not put this into place and save the public money and save public servants that heartache of working as hard as they do and yet not receiving a paycheck at the end. And Liberals made that choice. In this democratic system, they are the government, they made the decision, they put it into place, and now, Mr. Speaker, today we're saying they have to fix it. They have to fix the problems with Phoenix. So what has the impact been? They could have avoided it. They could have learned from the Queensland example. They could have rapidly moved once it became evident that Phoenix was a debacle, that public servants weren't getting their paychecks, that there were catastrophic personal and family impacts for the bad decision they made on February 28, 2016. And in the Queensland case, in 4 months, with the investment of money, they were able to fix it. We're 2 years later, and that has not been fixed. And the government doesn't even seem interested, inclined to fix it. They love to point fingers at the Conservatives. And I would too, Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives were at fault. The Liberals made that operational decision, and the Liberals have to fix what they broke. What has this meant? I've had public servants come to visit me in my office in New Westminster, Burnaby, tears in their eyes, because they're so dedicated to the country. They believe so strongly in public service. They want to give to the population and serve our citizens. And yet they are going deeper and deeper into debt because they're not getting a paycheck. Some have lost their homes, as you know, Mr. Speaker. There's the embarrassment of a public servant working full-time, going into a grocery store and not being able to buy food for their children because their credit cards are maxed out and this government has done nothing to fix it. And, Mr. Speaker, as you know as well, in each one of those cases, and there are thousands of these tragic cases, it takes a toll on the family, the emotional stress, and on the individual. These are not little things, to work full-time and not receive a paycheck. But then to compound it, Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government made the decision to start demanding, when there are occasionally payments that are too high, overpayments, to do what most loan sharks do across the country. It's not a laughing matter, Mr. Speaker. When a public servant receives a paycheck that is a little higher than it should be, instead of asking for the amount back that the public servant actually received, the Liberal government has vastly inflated that amount. So, yes, the public servant in some cases was overpaid, but they are now facing the stress of having to pay back far more money than they actually received. Mr. Speaker, that again is a Liberal decision, and that again is addressed in our motion today. We say very strongly that this kind of activity has to stop. It's not just the toll on the individual. It's the toll on communities. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, cities like Prince Albert have written to this government saying that it's not only the toll on the families and the public servants, but on the whole community. Businesses are impacted because public servants aren't getting their money. Local businesses are struggling now because of this government's refusal to fix the system. So the impact goes all the way down the line. And Mr. Speaker, through you, I would encourage city councillors who are listening tonight, or people who are listening today, to contact their city councillors and get their city councillors to write, as Prince Albert did, to the federal government and say, you've got to fix this system. Mr. Speaker, this impact has been tragic on so many Canadians of good faith, hard-working, who go to work every day and want to serve the country. And all they ask for in return is a fair paycheck, to be able to take care of their family, to be able to pay their rent, to put food on the table. That's not asking too much. And yet for two years now, this has festered, with the government refusing to take the actions that the Queensland government did. They fixed it in 120 days. And yes, albeit it was a significant investment, but as the Auditor General has mentioned, this government failed public servants in this country. And yes, it will cost us $1 billion, possibly more, that bad decision, but it needs to be fixed, and those public servants need to be compensated. Mr. Speaker, Liberal MPs will have to make a decision when this comes to a vote. And I'm encouraging public servants across the country, you work so hard, take the time to phone your local member of parliament, email your local member of parliament, tell them to vote yes on this motion, because we cannot have this become a partisan issue where Liberals say we're not going to take responsibility, so we're not going to vote for the motion. We have to fix this system. We have to respect our public servants. We have to respect the communities they serve as well. We have to respect them, and that means adopting this motion this week. And that means every member of parliament will have to make a choice. Do they choose politics, or do they choose supporting the hard-working public servants that are the backbone of public administration in Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Député de Gatineau.
The Honourable Member for Gatineau. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I didn't have much of an opportunity earlier to